The war in the Pacific was a crucible, forging new weapons and new heroes in its relentless heat. For the crews of the U.S. submarine fleet, the early days were a brutal awakening, a constant, desperate dance between survival and the hunt. It was a world of unseen perils and unforeseen challenges, demanding a relentless cycle of adaptation and improvisation. The USS Tang, boat destined for legend, faced its own baptism of fire. Early on, a harrowing encounter that laid bare the raw realities of submarine warfare. Deep beneath the waves, the Tang was an unseen hunter until a pursuing destroyer's depth charges tore through the ocean, turning hunter into hunter into hunter. The concussive blasts forced the submarine into an uncontrolled, terrifying deep dive. Her hull, a fragile skin, against the immense power of the ocean, groaned and squeezed under the increasing sea pressure. Past 450 feet, then 475, the descent continued relentlessly, the bathymetrite needle tracing a sharp 5-degree drop in water temperature. The Tang plunged to a critical 612 feet, her depth gauge needle resting against the pin, marking what felt like the 9 longest minutes of the crew's lives. At this extreme depth, the immense pressure found the weakest point, the number 5 torpedo tube. Water began to spray violently from gaps in its inner door, bayonet locking ring flooding the forward torpedo room. Lieutenant Hank Flanagan, ever calm under pressure, reported the ingress, taking some water but can hold it for a while. It was not the panicked chaos depicted in Hollywood films, but a grim methodological struggle. Men stood in knee-deep water, what Hank called a lake, working with urgent precision, their faces grim but determined. Mechanical issues compounded the crisis. Inadequate air pressure at such depths prevented safety systems from operating effectively, and blowing ballast tanks would instantly reveal their position to the destroyer still lurking above. Desperate manual intervention was the only option. The captain himself hooked up safety systems, urgently calling out to the diving officer, level off at 500, Bill. Then issuing the critical commands, blow safety, blow bow buoyancy. DeLapp, working the manifold, heard the 3,000-pound air roar as the robust safety tank compensated for the flooding. Finally, Bill's voice cut through the tension. "We've got her." Control was regained, and the Tang began its slow, cautious ascent, a testament to the crew's cohesion and their ability to adapt to a life-or-death situation. This initial patrol also revealed the limitations of early operational planning. Submarines were often deployed in rigid fleet-type dispositions, such as the circular pattern around Palau, 60 miles from the pass, during Operation Desecrate. This strategy, the author argued, negated the very strengths of stealth and surprise, effectively turning these powerful offensive assets into mere scouts. Crews endured long dives in hot boats, with dwindling batteries periodically surfacing for position checks. The area often became a stagnant area, offering little opportunity for engagement, a stark contrast to the aggressive Paul Revere disposition that would allow for staggered, unpredictable attacks. The Tang's first patrols were further marred by technical and tactical challenges. The SJ radar, a vital tool for tracking and targeting, was frequently inoperable, requiring extensive dismantling and repair. Soundman cavalry, often squeezed into tight spaces, worked tirelessly to solder delicate parts, forcing a reliance on visual lookouts and passive sonar, a naked attack strategy that amplified their vulnerable and fragile tower, a naked attack strategy that amplified their delicate parts forcing, a naked to sardent delicate parts forcing, a naked attack strategy that amplified their When the SJ radar was back online, it didn't guarantee success. Post-attack analysis, spearheaded by the captain analysis Fraus after a missed strike on the Huso Maru, revealed critical flaws in firing solutions. Primarily stemming from inaccurate enemy speed estimations, errors as significant as 6 knots. Contributing factors included radar outages during tracking, enemy evasive, worm-turning and targets pouring on coal to add speed. Though the torpedoes missed, the captain reflected that at least they had scared them more than they'd scared us. But the frustration was palpable. He committed to personally reviewing all firing data, acknowledging that a submarine was never held accountable for every one of her misses any more than a quarterback who now and then fails to connect. This meticulous review process underscored the critical need for continuous learning and adaptation, never filled subject, the Pathanel and issues, any more than a quarterback who now and then fails to connect at fervit. To counter these persistent challenges, the Tang underwent crucial modifications. A crow's nest was installed, offering improved lookout capabilities, especially in rough seas, using sister hooks for the clearing line. More significantly, when new VHF/UHF antennas were slated for installation, the captain recognized that the standard placement would block crow's nest access and create dangerous turbulence at periscope depth. He proposed installing them in the bridge cowl. Commander W.D. Irvin, the base repair officer, bristled at this deviation, insisting only the force commander can authorizing a change. Undeterred, the captain, prioritizing operational effectiveness and crew safety, bypassed standard channels and appealed directly to Admiral Lockwood. In their private meeting, the captain explained the risks, emphasizing the potential need to redo the job at sea. Admiral Lockwood, understanding the unique operational needs of a fighting submarine, granted permission, with a simple, direct statement, "Oh yes, submarine granted permission," texted. "The antennas, it's your boat, have them installed, anywhere you want." This direct advocacy, challenging established procedures for the good of his crew and mission, fostered an unshakable sense of pride and loyalty, a bond essential for morale in the unforgiving world of submarine warfare. These initial experiences, though fraught with peril and frustration, laid the groundwork for the Tang's future effectiveness. Each near disaster, each missed target, each technical setback became a lesson learned, a catalyst for refining tactics and technology. The meticulous post-attack analysis and the captain's unwavering commitment to continuous improvement transformed the Tang from a vessel facing the limitations of its era into a formidable force ready to carve its legend into the accelerating war in the Pacific. The war in the Pacific, a brutal crucible for men and machines, forced an evolution in the very nature of submarine warfare. From the relentless, unseen hunter, the American submarine was compelled to adapt, often transforming into a vital lifeline, a rescuer in a vast, unforgiving ocean. This shift was not merely strategic, it was a deeply human response to the escalating demands of a conflict that pushed men and their vessels to their absolute limits, demanding ingenuity and a willingness to shatter established protocols. For the USS Tang, this evolution was a lived reality. Her crews had already weathered the persistent threats of Japanese aircraft, like the Zeikis and Bettys, which had repeatedly forced her into evasive dives near strategic locations like Greyfeather Bank, rendering offensive actions impossible and making even battery recharges a perilous gamble. This constant aerial harassment underscored the vulnerability of submarines and the need for new roles beyond pure interdiction. The massive airstrikes on Truk Atoll, a maelstrom of destruction and opportunity, thrust the Tang into an urgent mission of mercy, transforming her from a hunter into a lifeguard for downed aviators. It was in this desperate context that the Tang's Advanced Intelligence Center, AIC, truly came into its own, demonstrating an unprecedented level of initiative that redefined adaptable command structures. Operating with a proactive intelligence capability that would have been the envy of any carrier or staff, the AIC not only knew pilots by name and voice, but often ran ahead of traditional directives, intercepting and replying by voice on the 4475 frequency. This direct, almost audacious communication was epitomized by the captain's unconventional request to Admiral Mitcher for night fighters to locate a final missing raft. "We'll need 2 night fighters to locate the last raft, Admiral," he'd stated, to which Mitcher's immediate and unequivocal reply was, "You'll have 3. At sunset, 3 black-winged night fighters, likened to Black Albatross, joined the Tang. Their guidance, combined with the submarine's unique identification flares, fired from the Buck Rogers gun, leading to the dramatic rescue of the final aviators in the fading light. This direct appeal, bypassing rigid chains of command, powerfully debunked the myth that rescue operations must strictly adhere to established hierarchies, showcasing how initiative and agile communication could yield superior results and save lives. The continuous combat operations and the relentless pace of patrols meant that vital hubs like Midway Atoll became crucial for refits and repairs. This strategic turning point in the Pacific War, having secured Allied bases, served as a temporary haven where the Tang's battle-worn crew could recuperate and their vessel could be readied for the next mission. Yet, adaptability wasn't limited to humanitarian roles. The Tang's audacious tactics extended deep into enemy territory, particularly in the challenging Yellow Sea. Here, the crew employed innovative methods, like the feeler torpedo and close-range underfoot attacks, exploiting the enemy's predictable zigzagging patterns. This willingness to push tactical boundaries was never more dramatically evident than when the Tang, in pursuit of the Kuroshio Maru, found itself in the unthinkable predicament of running aground in shallow waters near the coast. "I can't, we're aground," the dive officer near the coast, Larry, had reported, leaving the captain to squirm on the conning tower deck, like a reptile, as Fraz quietly assessed the pretty hopeless situation. Yet, in that moment of extreme peril, the Tang executed an immediate unconventional attack, backing full while firing torpedoes, a maneuver unheard of by even the experienced crew. The subsequent peril by even the experienced crew have done said conference today, backing full while firing torpedoes, a maneuver unheard of by even the experienced crew have done said conference today, backing full while firing torpedoes, a maneuver unheard of by even. Tremendous explosions that confirmed the Kuroshio Maru's sinking implicitly challenged the long-held notion that submarines must always operate in deep water, showcasing a successful attack in extremely shallow and hazardous conditions, even after running aground. These patrols, a blend of combat and humanitarian missions, solidified the Tang's reputation for both effectiveness and adaptability. They laid bare the immense psychological resilience of its crew who navigated the constant tension between mission objectives and practical limitations, proving that in the crucible of war, the human element, ingenuity, courage, and a profound sense of duty was as vital as any torpedo or radar signal. Admiral Lockwood's direct order had sent the Tang deep into Empire waters, a strategic imperative following the loss of the Marianas. This was the enemy's front door, a treacherous realm where survival hinged on an unseen edge, often provided by technologies like the APR-1 radar detector. Its silent warnings, a lifeline in the hostile seas. The non-directional device, emitting no signal, offered invaluable early warnings of enemy radar presence, a critical advantage in the increasingly dangerous waters near the Japanese home islands. Yet, even with advanced detection, the Tang's arsenal presented its own challenges. The Mark 18-1 electric torpedoes, mass-produced and lacking the precision of handcrafted weapons, were prone to critical flaws. Their depth-keeping mechanisms, often running too deep, had plagued previous attacks, turning sure hits into frustrating misses and even raising suspicions of elusive Q-ships. It was a stark reality that these vital weapons, despite their potential, carried an inherent unreliability exacerbated by the Navy's earlier decision to deactivate anti-circular run devices, a design choice that would later cast a long, tragic shadow. Meticulous torpedo maintenance and calibration, a relentless effort to overcome these mass-production flaws, had become a critical, ongoing task for the crew. Each warhead was given fresh eyes, a ritual no real torpedoman would skip, understanding that more than pride and reputation hinged on their success. Patrolling the Honshu coast was a relentless test of nerve and endurance. The shallow, contested waters near Nagasaki, though familiar from previous high-stakes night attacks against convoys using SJ radar and smoke screens, were now even more dangerous. Enemy vigilance had intensified dramatically. A gauntlet of 252 megacycle radar, relentless small craft lookouts, and echo-ranging patrols. Each day brought a trying series of evasions against noisome small craft, forcing the Tang into constant energy-tapping maneuvers. Periscope fogging became a persistent frustration, demanding minimum exposure in an environment where every second topside was a gamble. The gunboat, loaded with depth charges, was a frequent, terrifying visitor, its pings driving the submarine deep, testing the resilience of the new deep hull, which had proven its ability to withstand severe explosions. The captain, outwardly calm, admitted his own fear during the ordeal, a sentiment shared by his proved times a deep. That night, the weird sounds of a Dracula movie, echoing through the compartments, offered a fleeting, almost absurd form of coping, a desperate attempt to normalize the abnormal. This arduous, often frustrating, and highly dangerous work implicitly debunked any notion of easy submarine victories. Even after the successful sinking of a large naval transport in a daring hit-and-run engagement, demonstrating the effectiveness of well-maintained torpedoes and precise firing solutions, the peril did not recede. The Tang found itself in a trap, a meticulously coordinated sweep. Light screws and echo ranging from multiple PCs and destroyers appeared on the starboard beam and quarter. Fraz, reinified Beeses, never to do not to dine bekises dorinaire. The navigator, his voice tight with alarm, exclaimed, "This situation stinks." The enemy patrol craft positioned far to seaward were clearly working in concert, forming a wide, inescapable net. Without hesitation, routine orders sent the Tang into a great descending curve, a half-turn of a helix twisting silently toward deeper, friendlier seas. Troops quietly rigged for depth charges, the familiar, grim preparations, a testament to their readiness. Above, Bergman, on the topside-mounted JP head, masterfully tracked the low-pitched pings of the persistent enemy, his skill a vital shield. Below, the kind seas and a 5-degree gradient provided a crucial reflection for most of the enemy's pings, allowing the submarine to cruise to safety, a testament to both human ingenuity and the unforgiving yet sometimes merciful ocean. This period, a relentless gauntlet of close calls, technological battles, and moments of sheer terror, solidified the Tang's reputation. In the wardroom, after the immediate threats had passed, the crew found solace in reflecting on what went right, a discussion more enjoyable and equally important as analyzing failures. The junior officers, unplowed, went right, a discussion more enjoyable and equally important as analyzing failures. The junior officers, unplowed, went right, a discussion more enjoyable and equally important as analyzing with their flexible and fresh ideas, contributed to these vital post-mortems, ensuring every disappointment and triumph added to the crew's collective experience. Darkness after such days was trebly welcome, heralding the aroma of God's fresh air, frying steaks and the roaring diesels for a full-power run away from the enemy. The unwavering emphasis for a full-power run away from the enemy. On meticulous torpedo maintenance, transforming unreliable weapons into effective tools, and the operational flexibility displayed in the face of ever-adapting enemy countermeasures proved critical. This was a grinding, arduous campaign where survival and success were hard-won, demanding not just technological proficiency and bold tactical decision-making, but the exceptional, often autonomous skill and sheer grit submariners who dared to exploit weaknesses and survive in the increasingly hostile waters of the Empire. The Pacific War, in its final brutal acceleration, demanded everything from the men who fought it. For the crew of the USS Tang, this meant pushing beyond endurance, their operational schedule relentlessly intensified by the urgency of the Leyte campaign. Their extraordinary performance and unwavering unit cohesion had already earned them the prestigious Presidential Unit Citation, a testament to their prowess. Yet, even as accolades poured in, the relentless cycle of patrols continued, bringing with it new faces and unforeseen perils. New officers, fresh from training, were integrated into the Tang's tight-knit crew, undergoing a baptism by fire that would swiftly eclipse any classroom drill. Among them were Paul T. Wines, affectionately known as Tiny, whose jolly nature belied the gravity of his new role, and John H. Ubeck, who possessed an intuitive, almost uncanny, fine feel. Under the experienced eye of Senior Watch Officer Larry, they learned the meticulous rhythm of submarine operations. Their rigorous training, however, would soon be tested, not by enemy fire, but by the raw, untamed power of nature. A critical intelligence report, an ultra message, intended to guide them, inadvertently steered the Tang directly into the heart of a full-fledged typhoon. The storm intensified with terrifying speed. The barometer plunged to a harrowing 27.8 inches, and the seas, already building significantly, became monstrous. 8-foot waves, then 10, then 40, perhaps even 95 feet from crest to trough, became towering walls of water. The great muffled roars of the mounting seas escalated to screaming winds and crashing seas. The Tang was caught in the dangerous semicircle, enduring violent rolls that once reached a terrifying 70 degrees, flinging the captain over his bunk. Guardrail. Solid green water crashed over the bridge, burying the submarine. in a monstrous wave, yet, miraculously, her periscope remained intact. With fingers mentally crossed, a critical high-stakes maneuver was ordered, turn the submarine directly into the storm's waves. Jones, stationed at the helm, fought the wheel as the boat became a wild-going the fuck of plunging roller coaster. Below, men wedged themselves between bunks or hugged frames, enduring the constant pressure on their ears, one exclaiming, "Jesus Christ, is she ever coming back?" Hot tea and toast offered small, fleeting comforts as the barometer, after its terrifying descent, slowly began to rise, signaling their emergence from the storm's grip. Displaced and battered, the Tang pressed on, operating in the complex and treacherous environment around Formosa and the China coast. Here, Allied air attacks by Task Force 38, lifeguard assignments for downed airmen and radar-equipped Japanese patrols created a crucible of constant vigilance and tactical shifts. The fluidity of intelligence and operational orders was never more evident than when an ultra message about a Garriator Shimot signed to Formosa Banks arrived, promising a high-stakes target. The crew, already in the wardroom, studying charts and plotting routes, felt the surge of anticipation for such a prize. Then, just as swiftly, a subsequent ultra message arrived, Callop. Callop! The captain, hearing the news, gave the terse command, "Clear the bridge." The mission and the hope of a decisive strike evaporated, a stark reminder of the unpredictable nature of command. Soon, a new directive arrived, a priority dispatch for a TAC force proceeding north along China coast, initiating yet another high-stakes pursuit. At 23:30 on October 20th, the Tang made radar contact on its A-scope, a Katori-class cruiser, and its escorts. The darkness was a welcome cloak as the submarine began close-quarters pursuit, navigating great swells and rough seas that broke high on the conning tower Fairwater. But the Tang's Mark 18-1 torpedoes, with their limited speed and endurance, proved frustratingly inadequate. Despite several attempts, including an up-the-kilt shot, at 900 yards the torpedoes failed to hit the cruiser. The agonizing wait for impact was met only with silence. Suddenly, enemy searchlights, hooked up in series, and creating a blinding flash, pierced the night. "Jesus Christ," the captain muttered, "ordinary, clear the bridge." Wooden silent to "Jesus Christ," the captain muttered, "Ordinary, clear the bridge." Rig ship for depth charge. Rig for silent running. The Tang Dove, the smoking lamp, doused automatically. Later, the crew found grim humor in the missed opportunity. One officer remarking, "I wonder what the Katori's captain would do if he knew that 5 times in a row he'd missed getting 6 pickles in the side." Another adding, "And a half dozen up the fanny." To compound the frustration, the SJ radar, which had initially performed well, quit again and given up the ghost, forcing a retreat to a safer area for uninterrupted repairs. The Leyte Gulf patrol culminated in audacious tactics against a Japanese convoy using SJ radar and a crucial navigos, while uninterrupted repairs were uninterrupted. The navigator meticulously plotted courses and ranges, allowing for precise attack planning. The bells of St. Mary's rang out, signaling battle stations. At 0005, on October 25th, the Tang launched its first Mark 18-1 electric torpedo at a 2-stack transport. The characteristic shudder of the launch, the whine reaching the bridge, and the slight shake forward marked the beginning of the engagement. A second torpedo quickly followed, hitting under her foremast. The enemy responded with searchlight signaling and anti-aircraft fire, but the Tang pressed its advantage. Running a gauntlet between the two columns, the Tang launched its 5th torpedo at a tanker which hit home, transforming the area into an evening twilight with fire. A 6th electric torpedo followed, aimed midships to break the tanker's back and set it ablaze. Frank, ever-precise, corrected range estimates to 600 yards for subsequent shots. The detonations continued like a slow-motion string of monstrous firecrackers, with the Tang having a holocaust on either beam. With 4 ships sunk and a 5th at least stopped, escape became the priority. All ahead flank nearly coincided with the launch of the last after-torpedo and the boiler few too. The great blotch of smoke from the 4 diesels, though receiving a well-placed large-caliber salvo from a destroyer escort, provided cover. The destroyer escort, still ploughing towards the Tang, met its demise with an explosion so final it suggested a torpedo hit. Relieved by the destroyer escort's demise, the crew considered the immediate engagement complete, but the mission was not over. A transport, seemingly stopped and damaged from the initial attack, lay dark and lifeless. The captain, realizing the risk of the enemy salvaging the vessel, decided to re-engage. The Tang slid quietly, at 6 knots, without a ripple, toward the dark, damaged transport. A quick fire coincided with Frank's palm against the firing plunger. The transport, already hit forward, received a final detonation, ensuring vital spaces aft would flood, sending her to the bottom. The catastrophic moment came next. At 0230, the Tang fired its 24th torpedo. As the captain exclaimed, "Hot dog, course 090, head her for the Golden Gate," and hit his palm with his fist, the torpedo's luminous wake streaked out dead ahead. Immediately, the torpedo began to run erratically, curving sharply. The Navy's prior decision to deactivate anti-circular run devices on submarine torpedoes, coupled with an inherent flaw in the Mark 18 Mod 1, had set a trap. The torpedo was coming back. The crew, including Frank and Welch, responded to the alert, but the situation rapidly deteriorated. "All ahead emergency. Right full rudder," the captain ordered then. Left full rudder in a futile attempt to evade. It was akin to moving a ship, longer than a football field, and proceeding at harbour speed, clear of a suddenly careering speedboat. The torpedo continued to porpoise, causing its jammed vertical rudder to become momentarily horizontal, and then, with a devastating impact, it struck the Tang bock. The ship sank by the stern in mere seconds, the way a pendulum might swing down in a viscous liquid. The seas rolled in from aft, washing the 9 officers and men from the bridge. The captain watched as the Tang's bow hung at a sharp angle, struggling like a great wounded animal, a leviathan, before disappearing into the lonely seas. In my total grief. Of the crew, 13 men initially escaped the sunken submarine, enduring the immense pressure at 180 feet, with some returning to the torpedo room to revive prostrate comrades. Lieutenant J.G. Hank Flanagan utilized a Momsen lung, while Lieutenant Larry Savadkin escaped from the conning tower, ingeniously using his trousers as water wings. Chief Boatswain's mate William Liebold swam for 8 hours. In the end, only 9 survivors, including the captain, first-class radio technician Floyd Caverly, motor machinist's mate Jesse Dassilva, Clayton Decker, torpedoman's mates Pete Norowanski, and Hayes Truckee, were picked up by a Japanese escort vessel, P-34. Their ordeal transitioned from combat to brutal captivity. At Takao, Formosa, they faced threats of beheading, confined to the Kieran Clink, with wrists tied high to jail walls, enduring relentless mosquitoes. Conditions worsened at Afuna, a notorious interrogation camp where physical terror and starvation diet were designed to break men. Prisoners endured severe beatings and meager rations, bowls of warm, lumpy rice and thin soup, totaling only 300 calories per day. The transfer to Aomori, a causeway-connected island near Yokohama, felt like surfacing after an all-day dive. Here, prisoners, dressed in tattered whites and rags for shoes, were forced to dig great caves, and biribiri became rampant. But the war's end arrived dramatically on August 15, 1945, with Emperor Hirohito's voice announcing Japan's surrender. The guards, initially stunned, soon broke down. The POWs, in a unique celebration, enjoyed Jip Cornhorse Gutall Dumpo. On August 28, 1945, Captain Harold Stasson's destroyer division anchored off Aomori, initiating the evacuation and their eventual release. The loss of the Tang was a stark reminder of the immense human cost of war. A tragedy born from both combat and the unintended consequences of technological and strategic decisions. Yet her final actions cemented her legacy as one of the most decorated submarines in U.S. Navy history. Posthumously awarded its second Presidential Unit Citation on January 24, 1946, the USS Tang was distinguished as one of the most highly decorated submarines in U.S. Navy history. In March 1946, her captain received the Congressional Medal of Honor for his actions, a poignant recognition amidst the immense human cost of war, both in the brutal combat and the harrowing captivity that followed. The guns fell silent, the Emperor's voice echoed across the airwaves, and the brutal world-spanning conflict finally ceased. For the surviving submariners of the U.S. Navy, the end of the war brought not immediate triumph, but a quiet, often frustrating struggle for recognition. Their silent service had operated in the deep, away from the public eye, their victories unseen, their sacrifices largely unacknowledged. The USS Tang's extraordinary accomplishments, born from both tactical brilliance and tragic loss, became emblematic of this broader fight for historical vindication. Even the captain's own recommendation for the Congressional Medal of Honor for his actions in attacking the final two convoys found itself ensnared in the labyrinthine bureaucracy of wartime awards. It was a complex, often flawed process, where valor could be lost in paperwork, highlighting the impersonal nature of official recognition. Even for the most profound acts of courage, this struggle was magnified for the entire submarine force by the Joint Army-Navy Assessment Committee (JANA). Tasked with the impossible task of verifying every sinking, the committee operated under immense limitations, the pervasive secrecy surrounding ultra-intelligence, the almost complete lack of Japanese records or survivors to corroborate claims, and even simple clerical errors in wartime patrol reports. The committee's work often led to arbitrary disallowances, sparking deep frustration among crews who had witnessed their kills with their own eyes. Picture the laborious committee process, men poring over maps and grainy reports, detached from the visceral reality of combat. Steward's mate Walker, a man whose adamant insistence on the truth had once made him a figure of quiet authority, even while gambling, would later speak out about the committee's skepticism regarding the Tang's successes on the truth, had once made him a figure of quiet authority, even while gambling would later speak out authority of. He adamantly insisted on more sinkings than JANAC credited, his memory clear, his conviction unshakable. He had seen the stark image of a ship's bow sticking 40 to 50 feet out of the water, after a devastating convoy attack in the Formosa Strait, a testament to the raw destructive power of their torpedo. Yet, JANAC's reports often failed to credit such clear-cut victories, even when later confirmed by Japanese intelligence that reported very many losses in the Formosa Strait. The tension between official verification and the brutal reality of combat was a chasm few on the committee could bridge. The public, fueled by newsreel headlines, celebrated the great battles and landings, Coral Sea, Midway, Iwo Jima, bestowing kudos and prominent news coverage on the surface fleets and air forces. Meanwhile, the relentless, secretive patrols of submarines, operating for 2 months at a time, in the enemy's own yard, remained largely unacknowledged, their profound impact on the war effort underestimated. These were the unsung heroes operating in the shadows, their victories often too clandestine, times. Despite these challenges to their official record, the Japanese leadership itself understood the truth. Submarine losses were a primary factor in their defeat. U.S. submarines, comprising less than 2% of the Navy's personnel, had sunk over 5 million tons of merchant shipping and more than 600,000 tons of warships, more than all other Allied forces combined. It was a devastating blow delivered by a small, elite, and often invisible force. This strategic impact came at an immense human cost. Submarine warfare carried the highest casualty rate in the armed forces, 6 times that of the surface navy, with 52 submarines lost. The author's personal recognition with the Congressional Medal of Honor for his actions in attacking the last 2 convoys eventually came in March 1946, a poignant acknowledgement amidst the immense human cost of war. Yet, for many, the broader historical record remained contested, a lingering injustice for the thousands who had served and sacrificed. Finally, in 1980, long after the war had ended, justice arrived. The submarine-related sections of the JANAC report were officially replaced with the accurate and comprehensive credits from wartime patrol reports. This vindication, though decades overdue, corrected the historical inaccuracies and finally recognized the extraordinary achievements of the submariners. Their wartime accounts, often dismissed as exaggerations, were proven true. Today, the legacy of the silent service echoes with a profound and moving metaphor. 3,505 shipmates are still on patrol. It is a stark, deeply emotional reminder of those lost at sea, their ultimate sacrifice woven into the very fabric of the ocean but bare tromes greatly. The Tang story and the broader narrative of the U.S. submarine force stands as a testament to strategic impact and human resilience, ultimately revealing the critical role of these unsung heroes in the victory of World War II, a legacy hard-won and eventually rightfully recognized.